Why Manchester?
Why Manchester? Well, originally, of course, I always believed that every event should have a good purpose, full purpose, and obviously Michael was active and he was ready, Michael Bisping, and he was ready to fight. Manchester crowd had proven to be a knowledgible crowd, and this has been a good market for us before, and I have an affinity for Manchester as well, I have to be very honest.
You've given us a nice little tease about next year's fantastic Magical Biscuit Tour. What it's like for us today?
Yeah, I've been talking to Dana and Lorenzo for a long time now about the growth of UFC globally needs to be more local, and let me explain what that means. We've been an American product that has taken the hearts and minds of everybody around the globe, but ironically most of what we do is built for US television networks. The objective of our exercise is to give our European networks product during their prime time. So what we plan to do is we've created a UFC Fight Night series, a minimum of 6 events next year. The arenas are already being booked as we speak, but ideally that product is not for American television unless they choose to take it. So the great part of that is you could be on a Saturday anywhere in the world and you could be watching events from Asia on your own network. You could be watching events from the USA, from Brazil, and from Europe, which could actually lead you to a 12-hour package of UFC products. So for the real hardcore fans, this only adds more spice to what they can get. But more importantly, my job here is to bring new audience to this wonderful sport and obviously to the UFC. So we'll be kicking that off in March in London at the O2 Arena. The date is to be finalised, but it's within the first 2 weeks of March, and we'll go from there.
Would that be a pay-per-view, or would that be one of these more local events like you're talking about?
A bit more of a local event. The pay-per-view business in Europe is not as strong as it is in the United States. And it's up to the US networks to decide whether they take this product, but by virtue, there's many things that we can change in the world, and UFC has done a great job of changing the landscape of sport in the world. The one thing that we're struggling with is time zones. We've not been able to make a difference there. So apparently they're etched in stone and they'll be with us for the rest of our lives. So we're just trying to create product in the prime time area.
So it's entirely possible that these British and European Fight Night events could well be bought by a network other than Fox. We can see them in the US on NBC.
Yeah, and that's going to be down to the country of that's operating. If the USA decide that they can share the content with other networks and other broadcasters, then that's entirely up to them. That's not a decision for me to make. Right now, here in the United Kingdom, for instance, we have BT Sport carry our product. But in Brazil, you can go to Brazil and there's various products available. You could watch tape-delayed fights, you could watch archived events, you could watch Ultimate Fighter, and you can watch live events, and they can be spread across multiple networks.
Should we read anything into the fact that for the events coming up over the next couple of days, Dustin Poirier is here and Gegard Mousasi is here alongside Conor McGregor and Alex Gustafsson? Is there something we should know going on, or?
Yeah, they're all interested in this market. The EMEA market is to be a great global athlete. You want to be connecting with your fans around the world. They see a value in that. They see that they can see what's going on in Europe, Middle East, and Africa. They want to be guest fight. They want to come and guest and be in the public eye. And I don't blame them. It's not just about being in the octagon. It's also they seem to see themselves as human interest stories outside of the octagon. So I think if you look at that cast, though, I will say this, and I can only be thankful to Lorenzo and Dana and the guys. They also want to see the EMEA region really get kick-started again, and with that in mind, they've sent some great guys to come and help us out.
What's the African element?
What is the African element? There's a big movement down in South Africa. There's a company down there, a promotion called EFC, Extreme Fighting Championship. They do about 10, 12 events a year. We know those guys very well. They've basically taken the U and put an E, and it's pretty much the same product. They're great guys. They run a great business, and they're now on SuperSport, which is the television network down there. And we talked to them about, how can we work down there and bring the UFC to South Africa. There's some great African fighters coming out of sub-Saharan Africa, and again, we are the premium product in this sport. So every network wants to see us. Every event promoter wants to see us in their arenas. And I think, I look at this. I've only been here a year, but we haven't even started yet. We've only scratched the surface of what the UFC is capable on a global basis.
Garry, how happy have you been with the work that BT Sport have done for the UFC over the past few months?
Well, my judgment is probably different to thousands of others. I think what I'd like to do is just sort of take a minute to explain why we're with BT. We have a sport here which has a staunch following of a niche crowd. They're always going to watch the live events at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. They're always going to be following the fighters, the in-depth stories. They know more about it than any of us, and I include you guys in that group. But the challenge is that I want 500 to 1 million people watching this sport in this country, and I can't do it if everything's on at 3 o'clock in the morning. So I need the help of a network, and I need the help of a network to tell the story of what this sport is all about. It's not just about being in the octagon. These fighters dedicate their lives to this sport. They are committed more than I've worked in professional sport all my life. I've never seen such committed athletes to their work than these guys. And so I think that people need to know that. People need to know what this sport's all about, and currently not enough people do. And so I think we can help to educate and make people aware. Have BT Sport taken that by the horns? Absolutely. They're committed to the show. Lorenzo was in the studio last week. You may have seen that on Beyond the Octagon. It airs at 9 o'clock on a Tuesday night, and they're going to continue to invest in that. Don't forget, that show will air every week for the next 3 years, and that will only build the audience and grow the audience so that it helps our live content as well.
We saw you over the last couple of days some mini electronic competitions selling, getting rid of hundreds of tickets for the UFC. You're giving away tickets today, you're giving away tickets on Friday. How have the ticket sales been here, and how have you been happy with how the tickets have sold?
I look back at the last 3 events that we've had. In Sweden, we sold out we basically sold out in 2 weeks. We went to London, Wembley, and we had 10,000 there. That sold out in 7 weeks. And so, this is our second event in the UK for the last 12 months. Part of the challenge is, if you look at the sporting calendar, I don't know if you've seen it, over the next couple of weeks in Manchester, David Hay was fighting Tyson Fury. That got postponed. He had a sellout in the same arena. Carl Froch is here. There's another boxing event. Tomorrow you've got Manchester City fans are all down in London at Chelsea, and Manchester United are here against Stoke at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The Rugby League World Cup started this week. That's also on. That's consumable cash coming out of the pockets. What I do promise the fans, and I am committed to doing this, and I've talked to Lorenzo and Dana, our pricing proposition was exactly the same as we've always had. And I wonder if there's an opportunity for us to develop a different pricing mechanism for the product that we bring to the arenas, which allows more access. Got to give fans the opportunity to come visit. We sell a very high price ticket, and our entry level price at £70 is well in line with what's available in the sporting landscape. The challenge is that there's 15,000 tickets, and of the opportunity to come and access, 6,000 of them are over £125. 6,000 of them are over £125. I think I've got to try and find a solution to that.
So would you put that on one of your main agendas over the next few months?
That's definitely on my agenda, and I think that fans, and I've been involved in professional sport, fans want price and value. It doesn't necessarily come from the price of the ticket. Maybe there's more opportunity to have more events surrounding and shouldering an event. If you go to Vegas during the July International Week, there's a fight expo. You can go and do a fitness challenge. We've just signed a fabulous deal with EA Sports. I could see us having a virtual fight challenge the day before the live physical event. And so you actually give fans, you give consumers things to do, ways to engage in the UFC content over a 48-hour period for the price of the ticket. So that price value proposition doesn't mean you've got to lower prices. What it means, you've got to give value to the customer.
The Ultimate Fighter Nations series are continuing around the world. It's one of the things they're using in China to try and break into that market. As you're looking to do more sort of regional content for these fight nights in prime time, the BT Sport being regional content for the UK, is the Ultimate Fighter something you might consider as part of that package?
Yeah, I'm on record. I look at this as much as I'm becoming more of a fan. I'm not as ingrained in it as you guys are, but I look at it from a business standpoint. One of the things that made the UFC successful is the product called the Ultimate Fighter, and I'm surprised that as long as we've been in Europe, Middle East and or Africa, we've never had that product used in this country or in this region. So it would be professionally naive and foolish not to assume that we have to start putting the Ultimate Fighter in this region. And I could see home championships in England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, all living in a house. I could see the Great Britain and Ireland, the Lions versus South Africa or versus Australia. I see no reason why that product, which has been successful across the sporting landscape and more importantly has been successful for UFC, I can't understand why we haven't done it before. So you should keep your eye on this space.
How you actually engage the fans 48 hours before an event. I see the success of the UFC in their ability to mainstream the actual sport. Are you working on mainstreaming the sport? And if so, can you unpack some of the mainstream ideas if you can?
Yeah, so if you look at the way that we've set up our business, we have a very strong connection with what we call the hardcore fan. There are many. The element that's the insight. I'm going to give you the insight. Footballers, rugby players of the highest level in the world love Ultimate Fighting Championship. They respect the fighters as ultimately the fittest fighters or the fittest athletes in the world of sport. What that tells me is there's a consumer out there, a fan out there that loves sport, that wants to engage in what their heroes are engaging in. And that's what I would call conversion. To convert those fans, you've got to create awareness. They've got to understand what it is. So that's the first thing, okay? So how do we get people to come to more live events, and how do we get them to watch more live content on television, as we are doing with BT Sport as we try and grow that business. However, there's more to UFC than just the fighting and the fighters. You will see us open a gymnasium product, a gym chain. Over the next 3 years, you'll see over 300 gyms open in Europe. We've already got 100 gyms operating now, 7 of which are flagship gyms, 6 of which in the United States and 1 in Sydney. They are over 30,000 feet, and it's introducing people to the sport, including female and the white collar guy who just wants to get fit, but it's aspirationally to try and be as fit as the fighter. I think that's a great opportunity. So that's actually where you touch the UFC at another level. And the third level where we touch is the EA Sports, through virtual gaming. We know, for any of you who've got kids, for any of you who are into gaming, it's taken over our lives. There's a bigger world in the virtual world than there is in the physical world. So you could find the world title holder in May next year that has fought UFC as we launch the game in May, and he could be a 12-year-old kid from China. And the next day he could defend his title against a 20-year-old guy in Germany. And that's the beauty of the virtual world. So UFC is not just about live events. It's not just about Ultimate Fighter, because that's the core spectacle of who we are. Underneath it is people can touch the business, they can touch the brand, they can aspire to be in the world of UFC without physically fighting.
The UFC has quite an impressive, at least in the States, government lobbying operation. What work's being done with the UK government, European governments to help grow the sport, but also maybe in terms of regulation? Because obviously while you come over here, you're regulating yourselves rather than by athletic commissions in the US.
Yeah, and one of the challenges, of course, is that UFC isn't the sport. MMA is the sport. So a bit like football or soccer, you know, in England the Premier League isn't the game, the FA is the game. And so we have the same dilemma. So we have to protect our own sport, but we've grown quicker than the federation can grow. So it's up to the International Mixed Martial Arts Federation to take on the responsibility of managing the governance and the responsibility of the regulatory issues. We are helping them do that. We're trying our best to accelerate their growth and development, but ideally you need an MMA federation in every single country to take the responsibility of the sport in their own hands. Now, the government are not going to look at the IMMAF if anything was to go wrong or if anything was to be out of hand. They're going to look to the UFC. So we ultimately also have a responsibility to protect the sport. We do engage at the government level. I think the more profile that we get and gain will become more of an issue. And I think it's time for people to understand and be aware that this sport is an elite performance athletic sport. These guys are fitter than any other athlete in the landscape of sport, and people and their misunderstanding and they don't understand the sport enough to have an educated point of view. So our job is to educate.
Garry, before you took the job in the UFC, what was your perception of the sport?
Well, I looked at it through the eyes of a football player, because I had 36 of them who, when I was in California in Torrance, I could never get my footballers to go on any events other than go to training because they had no choice. And then we used to lay on events for them. And we laid on an event to go to the Torrance UFC gym for a workout with a couple of Brazilian fighters, and we had to lay on extra transport. So the insight for me was, I looked at it and thought, there's something going on here, right? So that's the first thing I thought. When you look at the sport, then aesthetically, to the layman, it doesn't look quite right. And then the third part of it was, I didn't understand wrestling. I like boxing, I was a fan of boxing, but I didn't understand wrestling. At the NCAA level in America, I wasn't aware how big that sport was, and I had no idea about jiu-jitsu and the in-depth levels of technique that were required in jiu-jitsu. Once I got a better understanding of that, then you can see what makes up this sport. And I think that I always then look through my eyes at somebody who's uneducated, that feel that we've probably got to do a bit more of an education on what it takes to be a great world-class ultimate fighter.
Garry, you mentioned that you reached out to the UFC and working very closely. Given that you're going to be in Europe quite a bit next year, are there any countries that you're reaching out to when you're considering working closely?
Yeah, I mean, we always call EMEA, Europe, Middle East and Africa. It's a business term that's used in America. It's actually not a place, I don't know if you know that, but it's multiple countries. South Africa and the African continent is massive. Johannesburg is the gateway to the African continent in some ways, and South Africa is. So I can see us having an event down there in the next 18 months. Equally, you go to the Middle East, and we're having discussions in there with the not only the Middle East but obviously the Emirates, where it's huge. Jiu-jitsu is part of the school curriculum in Abu Dhabi. So if you're doing PE, you have to do jiu-jitsu. So that lends itself to tremendous opportunity. The demand for us to have events in their countries and in their regions is immense. We're having to say no more times than we're having to say yes. I think that's a nice problem to have from a business standpoint. But more importantly than that, you've got to make sure that you're showcasing the local talent, and we keep the levels of competition at the very highest, because that's what we're known for, that's what we'll always have. The other important part is that we'll never ever be just a local event for a local market. There'll be a propensity to have more local fighters and develop more fighters. So I'd like to see more African fighters on the cards. But if you look at tomorrow's event, we've got 16 nations represented. Everybody will say, well, it's just a bunch of English, there's a lot of English fighters. There's actually 16 nations represented tomorrow night. So we always see that going to be the issue. And the more events we have around the world, you'll see more Asian fighters, you'll see more African fighters, you'll see more Middle Eastern fighters, you'll certainly see more from Russia, Poland, Germany, where we need to have a matchmaking process that's local, as well as we do right now through Joe Silva, headed up by Joe Silva at a global level.
Do you see it working the same way like the Brazil shows work now, where there's essentially a Brazilian in every fight, and then maybe he fights a Brazilian, but most of the time he's fighting a guy from another country?
Yeah, that's a model that's proven successful successful in Brazil. I think you'll see it tomorrow. Joe and Sean and the guys have got that as a model that they're running right now. They do a great job in matchmaking, and I would never ever challenge their ability to do that. But I definitely think that as part of this event series, or this UFC Fight Night series and Ultimate Fighter, it's about developing more local talent. Because I think that there's not only is it good for the local nations, but the fans love it. The fans want to see somebody in Vegas waving their national flag, fighting for a world title. That's really what this global business is all about. You see it in soccer, you see it in rugby, you see it in all other sports, and that's what we're all doing it for now.
One of the nations represented tomorrow night for the very first time is Scotland, coming in and maybe keeping up the side against the English feathers a little bit. Talk a little bit about the decision to put a Scottish fighter on the card, friendly, even if it was last expansion into Scotland.
Well, again, there's a great arena up there. We always look at our digital traffic, and we do a lot of analysis on where people are coming from to engage. We have a high level of interest from Scotland, and there's more and more MMA gyms opening up, as you well know, up there. And with the new arena now in Glasgow, we've got the opportunity to put on an event there. So really, adding Scottish fighters it only enhances all of that, all of the above.
Is an event in Glasgow likely in 2014, maybe 15?
I don't know whether it's 2014, but I think within the next 2 years, again, you'll see, the demand levels are so high. It's not a case of where we do go. It's right now. It's where we don't go. That's the challenge.
Any sign of any European championships? Like with this European, are we going to see like a Europa Fight League title?
Yeah, I think you'll see us focus because of this. I think you'll see us get focused more on ranking, European ranking. I think you'll see us get more focused on, being representative. I mean, if you look at Alexander Gustafsson right now, it'd be very difficult to not see him as sort of one of the leading, if not the leading, sort of European champion, if you like, when he carries the flag. In his next event, that's kind of how you'd subtitle him. But there's not enough of that. I think that's my point, and I think what we've got to do is try and create these European heroes and have them at be the leading weight, in their weight, be the leading European to take on the challenge of around the world. And Dana and I talk about that a lot. I think there's got to be a little bit more purpose in some of our European events. You've got to be fighting for a reason, for something, and that's important. Whether we can't have a tournament, as you well know. It's very difficult for us to have a tournament, but we do see the opportunity to create more European championship.
Well, that will serve a purpose for the American side of the company as well, because then these guys have more weight and more context when they come over as top-ranked European champion.
Yeah, we're always looking for an analogy that coincides with the strategy. But the best I can think of right now is a bit like golf. You can play on the Asian tour, you can play on the European tour, you can play on the American tour, but actually there's 6 or 7 events a year that everybody wants to try and get on. And I could see that, I think I always look at Vegas as sort of the hallowed ground of fighting and combat, and I think it is for UFC. So you can be fighting in Europe, but ideally, the golden fleece is fighting in Vegas for a title.
The series next year, is the plan to do them all on Saturdays, or is there consideration being given to like Fight Night in the US?
Yeah, great question, because what we also have to be cognizant of here, same way as in the USA, you've got NFL, you've got NBA, and you've got in the summer you've got baseball. We have football, and on a Saturday night, 8 o'clock, the Spanish and the Italians play the best games at 8 o'clock at night on a Saturday. And if you're a soccer fan, you might want to watch that. What we're trying to do is find the opportunity. It seems that Friday night is always an open night. Alternatively, if you look at the United Kingdom, Saturday night, 72% of the audience is female. X Factor, Big Brother, and what's the other one that's on Saturday night? Strictly Come Dancing. There you go, straight from the mouth of. And so why not have the ultimate male product and at the same time? we could save many marriages, you know.
Do you have any update on Turkey?
Yeah, we will be in Istanbul. I think I haven't quite got the dates, but I think it's September, October, so it's second or third quarter. But we're going to go to Istanbul. We're working on that right now. There's 12 million people in one city. So when you talk about trying to make sure that you have an event in a culture that understands our sport, has a strong wrestling culture, and I think we'll be very successful there. And I think that will help open up and develop that market too.
Is that why you're going to Istanbul? Because you've got the wrestling background. Well, how did that sit in?
Yeah, no, it's. I think we always look at it from several areas. What's the population and the conurbation? What's the interest in the sport? And wherever there's a wrestling culture, we've always been relatively successful.
So it is popular in Turkey. Because I've heard nothing about UFC popularity in Turkey.
Yeah, no, I think that it's very popular there, as in Poland. Same thing. There's plenty of opportunity there. There are promotions holding events. One in Poland held one just a couple of months back, 12,000 people in an arena. So KSW. So we're doing our research and our analysis to find out where it's best to take the premium brand that everybody wants. And actually, a lot of the promoters that are already in these markets, they see us as enhancing their business. So we think it's a good opportunity.
So it sounds like us media on the UK circuit better get our passports ready.
You better get it. Make sure it's not illegal. Make sure it's a real one, and get it out because you're going to be using it. Yeah, I think it won't be long before we're doing 12 to 16 events a year. It won't be long at all.
Here at Sky Sports, for the boxing on Saturday, do you look at things like that, the fact of competition going down?
Absolutely. You must always do that. You have to keep your eye on what's going on around you. You know, when we put our event on in Manchester, then Hay and Fury put on an event straight after it, and Frock and they went out to market. So there's a competition. You just let's leave it at that. Everybody wants that same space. We're in a competition. We are the biggest. We are, everybody loves us, but everybody wants to knock us down as well, and that's understandable. That's the world of business, and we just got to keep doing what we do well. We put on the best fights. We put on the best fighters. We give the fans what they want, and we're broadcast now in 145 countries around the world with live event. That event tomorrow night will be in 145 countries. It's very difficult to compete with that, but people are trying.
If you'd known about those boxing events before you announced the Manchester, would you have considered a different location?
Probably would have, yeah. Okay, thanks guys. Thank you very much.